was going to kick off with a synopsis, but it's already been done. Brilliant. Gives us a few more questions to ask. Thanks everyone for joining us this afternoon for what will be a insightful dialogue with some really interesting leaders in the space of venturing in deep tech and dual use deep tech. It's I think one of the areas where there isn't a lot of clear understanding, but also where are those investments going, and also how is that going to contribute into that future economy that we're starting to develop. And so, rather than read off my synopsis, which has already happened, I'm going to go straight into the questions. And given the fact that Vitor, you're on my right, you're going to get the first question, mate. So, I'm going to ask you straight out, from a Middle East vantage point, what are those sectors that are most ripe for dual-use innovation and investments that you're seeing, certainly from a Nexus Capital perspective, but also your own experiences?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'll divide this in 4 chapters or 4 sectors. One of them is about autonomy and advancing sensing that are clearly civil and defense use. We have the case in UAE of the Edge Group that announced, as you know, multiple unmanned robotics launch and positioning themselves as a key autonomy player. In a second one, I will note the AI edge compute secure cloud. I think the national programs are scaling high-performance AI infrastructure, are creating downstream demand for dual-use apps. And as the third one, I will name cybersecurity and space satellite services, space-based ISR, PNT resilience, secure comms, have direct spillovers into smart cities, as we know, and also to critical infrastructure protection. And the fourth, I'll name energy and materials, like hydrogen, advanced batteries, and of course the biomed tech that we can talk about diagnostics and the biodefense. And I believe in this sector is today or now is the policy momentum, okay? And I see that many sovereign buyers participating on it, and lots of dual civilian/defense demand. There is real demand for that. An example from Saudi, where we can name GAMI. GAMI is the regulator that is pushing defense localization to Saudi, where the target is to have, by the end of 2030, more than 50% of the plan localized in Saudi. And they will pull dual-use supply chains, mainly manufacturing, testing, and of course, all the milestones needed to the chain.
Yeah, and I think the key word there is there's a lot of localization starting to happen,
correct.
which is driving.
Localization and partnership.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that leads nicely into Alex, on your side, from a Rosc perspective and also your own perspective, is what role should governments play in sort of de-risking early stage dual use ventures? I guess especially on the frontier technologies like quantum, biotech, and maybe some others.
Thank you, Karl. That's a rather specific question, because it actually has at least 4 constraints in it. So we're talking about government de-risking innovation, but innovation in frontier dual-use tech. I have a very simple answer, but one that requires some explanation, which is none. That's not really the role of government. Government's there for stability, security, unity, certainty, not disruption. It's not good at innovation. So it should be very judicious and conservative in approaching this. What government should absolutely not do is get involved in defining what science is or isn't. The Soviet Union did that with genetics. It's why there's no competitive biotech industry in Russia today. Government should not get involved in micro due diligence or investing in individual deals, and it should not get involved in picking winners. Broader commercialization policy, industrial policy in the French or Swedish sense. Having said that, government, and this speaks to Dubai, can have a very big role to play. Innovation is best done when government, the social sector, and the private sector work in tandem. So government should invest in R&D, particularly in dual use where others won't or can't, and do so in concert with research institutions. Government should act as a customer, and hopefully an early adopter or thin market customer, and ideally a customer which is guaranteed and communicative. And the biggest thing government can do is it can work to de-risk the broader context. Entrepreneurship is inherently risky, so the more government can invest in the supportive environment, the better. And I'd add that if government can be commercially minded, which is hard to do, so IQT in the United States is a good example of this. Those are good listening posts.
Yeah, and I think, as you said there, it's on that entrepreneurial journey as well, is how do you get in to support that, almost like as a platform to help grow and scale and drive that sort of globally. And I think this region is driving a lot of this.
Well, I think my point is this is something that's best left to entrepreneurs and to venture capital.
Yeah.
So the more government can create a level playing field or a competitive context for those forces to work, the better. And as you get into dual use, the more and more complex it gets.
Yeah, brilliant. I guess, Alexander, on your side, from Almaz Capital, and looking at your experiences, I mean, you got some deep, broad experiences over a very long time across many markets. And obviously on the dual use area with startups, you guys have backed several deep tech sort of ventures over the years across borders. What are some of those unique challenges in scaling those startups across borders, and some of those challenges for those startups in the emerging markets specifically?
It is very complicated topic, and actually, in modern world, I suggest to start from it, such as conference, since what means dual technology? So it is pretty like complicated question, since we live right now in the age of dual technology. We can touch any technology which is common right now. Quantum technology, it will be next wave of development. It will be next wave of fusion energy. We listen to some discussion right now. It will be also age of AI on the edge, which means require a lot of microprocessor development and combination with whole stack of software. So, and all this dual. What means dual? It means that anytime officer sitting in the office can turn this company to classified point. So it is one point. The second point, which you match actually, is that when you started to even create something, like in territory, for example, of United States, you immediately get another problem right now, since it is now density coming not just between China and the US, or between Russia and someone, or US or anyone, but it's coming between even Europe and US, sometimes tension in technology. So, which means anytime your origin will become very important, even you just develop software. It is what we see in our companies, which we have most companies coming from Europe to US. We still started to match it with previous technology, like cybersecurity or storage or something. But imagine right now quantum, which will become critical for cryptography, critical for many, many other things. So from this perspective, it is what I see is that technology moving very fast. Yes, so cross-border moving very fast, more faster than diplomacy between countries moving and all negotiation moving. So from this perspective, I see it as like dangerous stuff which we step in many, many directions. Of course, it is bringing complication, how you need to start company, how you need to work with company. You immediately need to put different basket where you put IP of your company. In the past time, it was easy. I am a European company, I opened Delaware company, I brought my IP, and I'm clean for US. But right now, I'm not so clean to my Cambridge lab, since in lab, they also started to report what type of technology scientists moving out of university and where. So it is where I see that we can discuss many topics around it, but it is becoming very complicated where it is time to start to understand any new technology in next wave of development in next 10 years will become dual use technology.
Yeah, I agree on that, and I think we're seeing it, as you rightly put, it's permeating across every sector as well. And so the commencement phase of creation of that IP is fundamentally an important assessment that has to be done in terms of where the jurisdiction is, but also some of those technologies are global in terms of use, but also, if I call it human-centric, required, across all sort of levels of sort of human interaction. And I think that's going to be really interesting to see develop over the next decade. Faris, on your side, with your experiences and Delos Capital's experiences around obviously Asia, but also in the emerging markets in general, you've also backed unconventional asset classes in general. How do you evaluate dual-use tech or deep tech ventures from a risk sort of adjusted perspective and accommodate for that?
Thanks, Karl. So, for example, we invest into defense and security businesses. We invest, but we also co-create. Generally, it's a system that we look to build from the get-go, where there should be a take-up once the system goes live, if it's a system, if it's a solution, if it's hardware. And usually it's for the military or for one of the enforcement agencies or for any use of the government. So having that level of assurance even prior to putting up the first line of code, for example, if it's a software solution, that gives us that sort of de-risked position and say, okay, let's pull the trigger and deploy this. So say for example, it's a body cam solution. In terms of dual use, it can be used for civilian purposes, for resilience, for public security, for public safety, but also for the military, for when they go out on their forays. So designing that from the start, we need to ensure that the government or the off-takers would have to get involved from the get-go, because then you have the question of who owns the IP, at what stage would they come in. A lot of the sovereign funds or a lot of the institutional funds, they wouldn't deploy capital at that stage. Even post-commercialization, they would require a certain level of revenue or some level of performance or delivery. So it's on the investors with early stage capital, even the universities, those with specific grants, if it's across other industries, not specifically on defense and security. There would need to be an ecosystem that works together to ensure that the early onset of the production of this company or the solution or whatever is being put out exists properly, and to ensure that it gets up to that stage to the point of liquidity or exit, or for it to be carved out, or for it to be bought out.
Yeah, no, they're key points. It's that early stage mitigation assessment that you've got to really put in place, and the rigor behind that, whether it's KYC, whether it's, there's many aspects to it, and that's really important.
Yeah.
Dovetailing back to you, Vitor, on your side, the approach on co-investment, which is really important, particularly around strategic alignment with government-backed entities. How do you approach that, and what's your sort of modeling around this?
Look, first of all, make sure you have the right partner on each phase of your project. Yeah. That is the first decision or critical decision that you need to make. And making sure that you don't partner with someone that after a couple of phases of your project is not anymore impacting your project or adding anything to the project. This is one. Some examples regarding deep tech here in UAE. You can find the example Tawazun for all that relate with defense enablement and acquisition. You can find Edge, I already mentioned Edge Group, for as integrator. It is fantastic. You see the Abu Dhabi, based RDI companies, very strong and very good in my opinion, for POCs and for first procurement. I think these are quite good for military and nation-wise good partners you can find here. If you go in our neighbors in Saudi, you can find GAMI for regulatory and localization targets, also military focus, of course. You can find SAMI, that is prime manufacturing, and you need that in the second phase of your project. And then you need to make sure you have always the option for sovereign strategic funds for scale up and manufacturing for the TOT. I think this is critical and is basic if you go on this side of your investment. Then I'll say to partner well, two short advice. One is make sure you have your term sheet clear with right IGN. Okay, what that means? As Alexander was saying, clear IP ownership, export control clauses, localization KPIs that are critical in nowadays here and with local entities, and options for also local manufacturing, okay, when the volume that you are manufacturing triggers that. The other advice is on the dual metrics. They are not less critical than the ones before, and is aligned on both economic KPIs, jobs, localization, how much of localization will happen in each phase of the project, and mission KPIs. That means which is the readiness, and which is the safety, and if you want to go in detail, which is the cost per mission hour. Okay? This, if you follow some of these basics, this will make you earn, a longer, stable sponsorship and relationship.
And I think the key word there is trust.
Correct.
By doing that,
Correct.
you've developed and earned that trust.
Absolutely.
Which then
Partnership.
drives, yeah.
You cannot try to do it alone.
Yeah.
You need always to listen to your partners. You need to give relevance for your local partners, even if you are the one bringing the IP, the know-how, and localizing that. You need to listen to them. You need to partner in reality with them.
Yeah.
Not like sometimes we see happening in this region.
Yeah, no, totally. Alex, on your side, I guess, how are you evaluating those long-term sort of resilience around the supply chain independence and bringing, investing into those dual-use sort of platforms? What's your sort of assessment around all that?
Yeah, I'll start on the meta on that one because I think at its heart, it's a very strategic question because it implies trade-offs. And I think Alexander hinted at this earlier, but we live in a world of contradictions where resilience or security defense is really seen as the pursuit of the nation state. Yet, on the other hand, supply chains are truly global. Whether it's the flow of ideas or part X or part Y, globalization is one. And so all nations on the supply chain front are vulnerable. On the low-tech side, China depends on the rest of the world for food and energy. On the high-tech side, the US can't ship an F-35 without Japanese components. So what do? I think it's really a choice of the baseline minimal level of indigenous preparedness, and it's a choice about alliance partners and what systems you buy into. Wars are won by who has the best alliance. I also agree that there's a contradiction in dual use where every mil tech is or has greater commercial uses. So on the one hand, you might want to keep that close to the chest, but the company is going to want to maximize its commercial opportunities abroad. So it doesn't really work. And so I think the only real defense against this is just to continually innovate. So the US monopoly on the atomic bomb lasted, 3 years, but then the hydrogen bomb, the neutron bomb, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we look for teams, technologies, companies, and contexts where continuous innovation is possible, and don't play so much in the can we keep the supply chain proprietary space.
Yeah, and I guess there's obviously so many experiences from history around the emerging tech space arising from those sort of conflicts, but also forward thinking in terms of application. Look at the internet as a primary example of that, the creation of IP.
Your cell phone or any technology really started as a military technology.
Yeah, and now we're seeing with the satellite, the GPS and everything else, right? Which leads well into Alexandra on your side on the IP protection and commercialization, because that's really at the end of the day is a commercially viable. So how do you balance IP protection and commercialization when technologies have strategic national sort of implications? It's a very broad area, but yeah.
No, as I told in the past time, was a little bit more easier than becoming right now. It is the main point. So, and the second one, it is we need to understand that for startup, it is very difficult to decide which game to play. So first of all, in the past time, all origins came in, as you told, from space, from military development, from defense development. After it's moved to our civil life. But today, from 90s, I will say 90s, 2000, changed the world. Actually, more advanced technology started to come from private market. So, and especially right now, we see even with all these achievements of which done in space by US, it is done by private sector, not by Boeing or someone. So from this perspective, it is common that now it is will back again, possibly, that the government will dominate since they would like to keep technology inside. And for emerging countries, it is difficult. They don't have this experience, and what they will keep tiny technologies. So the global technology will be located in majority in 2 countries, in US and China. I hope and believe in Europe, but Europe is not united for myself. It is segmented, many segmented countries. So from this perspective, it is very difficult to present someone else in the world right now who will start to dominate from this point of view. Other people need to play. But what to do for startups? So startup is tiny. It is very expensive to continue with dual point. When I'm in country where in the US we'll say, okay, create one board for military use, another board in company for civil use. So put the Chinese wall between 2 and continue develop for defense and continue to develop for private reason. In startup, it is too expensive. What this means that it can slow down innovation somehow, from my point of view. There's slowdown in coming since for double use technology, civil world market is very small in the beginning, and defense moving very slow. A lot of bureaucratics will still be a point in this. It is why I see some kind of problem also, which is coming. How to manage it? Of course, if you started to work in dual technology, you need to look, first of all, you're working possibly for defense, but you need to think as a startuppers that sometimes you have ability to move. So important not to become defense company immediately. If you will become defense company, you will die in this death valley for startups, where you will not have money, no have market, no have interest in you. So it is where I see. It is what we are trying to manage, but it is very difficult to manage this cross-border. Yes, so it is not easy job. It is difficult to manage inside country. It is easy possibly to manage, bring technology to this region from US, since you just open the trusted laboratory, show technology, open the secret, some type which is allowed to you a special application, connections, everything easy, but it is more difficult otherwise from emerging market to US, for example.
Yeah, it's walking a tightrope, but it's also finding that lane in terms of the commercialization versus I guess, any other area at the outset, and then going down that lane and building that trust at the end of the day for innovation in a sector, which is a key.
Yeah, trust and governance becoming very important.
Yeah.
Actually, you need to put this immediately in development in architecture, compliance and governance inside technical development. It is what needs to be done. You need to possibly segmentate your IP. You need to segmentate your actually access, your clean room to people to see. So it is many stuff which you need to take care of, which you did not take before. So before you just develop code. Right now you need to develop code in special segmented way.
Faris, on your side, I mean, how can alternative investors better engage with sort of defense-aligned innovation without compromising mandates such as ESG or their reputations?
It's on the governance part. At least that's what we look for, because these technologies will be developed not by the companies that we back. It would be by others. Having a governance structure, systematic structure in place ensures that the technology is scaled and it's used for the purpose that it's been built. It's used responsibly, essentially. And again, similarly, if we don't say it's a cyber defense technology, for example. For one of the solutions that we've recently invested in, it's an AI forensics tool. And it's used for public infrastructure, for public safety. So it's on the narrative as well, because it's very easy to say no to defense, to security, because of the sensitivities, because of the exitability. So it's a very narrow group, but it's still a technology that has dual use, as you say. So it's about understanding the technology or the solution holistically and what its purpose is, and setting a governance structure to make sure that it's used for its main purpose. Yeah.
Okay, great. I think we're almost on time. We've got one question which I'm going to ask everyone to sort of answer and respond to. If you can change one thing in the current, I guess, investment ecosystem to better support dual-use deep tech ventures from lab to market, which is what we're focusing on, what would it be from your perspective? And just, this is across, so I'll start with you, Vitor, on that one.
Well, I'll be fast. Stand up a shared dual-use validation fund plus a test corridor. That will buy you not just funds, but will accelerate deployments. Second is about a pulley vehicle that you can bring with sovereign corporate VC that helps you to procure limited rate runs for real users in the region. This will help you also in terms of the execution from demo to manufacturing. That can be, if you have this kind of collaboration, about at least 1 year saving. I believe also will de-risk your export control reviews. Will create also bankable evidence for scale capital. In short, is pair it with the non-stop compliance desk that many times we forget. We are, running around.
Bring AI. AI will do that.
Absolutely. Yeah, and you, with that, you can remove the I'll say the single biggest friction that always exists between funders.
Excellent.
I think this desk is the best.
Like it.
Yeah,
Alex,
I would say two things, and the first is a pretty off-cited answer, but going back to the context for entrepreneurship, we just need better banking options for dual-use startups. It's very difficult. The second, probably more controversial, is I've actually had this conversation with a couple of kind of frontline dual-use investors who are both practitioners in their former lives. And they've made a caution to investors. One said, look, there are too many travelers in this space. And the other said, all you investor guys need to stop pretending to be Navy SEALs. There are a lot of investors flocking to dual use right now who don't really know what they're talking about and are making it very difficult to separate the signal from the noise. So investors, I think, need to be a little more cautious about staying in their lanes and being willing to invest behind or alongside you people who really are on the front lines of dual use tech.
Nice.
Almaz.
No, I see it as 7 seconds. I will say the transparency and one more important, reputation becoming shield for dual-use technology to develop. So what I can say.
Great.
It's the system, the capital stack. The investors need to know what they're deploying capital into, how to grow and build the company. But the ecosystem from the lab all the way to the market, it doesn't really exist in the way that it should be. So that should be the main thing for me.
And on that, we are on time, and I really like to thank all the speakers here and the audience for being with us, and I hope you got a lot of value out of it, and I know I did, and looking forward to seeing you all again.